Sekondi is a city that rests quietly on Ghana's western coast. It is a place of twin harbors, where the scent of salt and fish hangs in the air. Today it bustles with the life of a modern port, its people moving with the rhythm of commerce and daily routines. But beneath this surface lies a history etched in stone and sorrow, a story often overshadowed by its more famous neighbors. Long before the city merged with Takoradi, it was a vital hub for European traders. They came first for gold, for ivory, for spices. Then, they came for people. The Dutch arrived in the early 17th century, seeing the strategic value of this coastline. They built a trading post, a foothold on a continent rich with resources they craved, and this small post would soon grow into a fortress of immense and terrible significance. The Dutch presence solidified with the construction of Fort Orange in 1642. It stands today, painted a stark white under the Ghanaian sun, its cannons still pointing out toward the vast, unblinking Atlantic. The fort was not just a symbol of colonial power, it was a machine built for a monstrous purpose. Initially a lodge for trade, its function twisted over time to serve the insatiable appetite of the transatlantic slave trade. It became a collection point, a warehouse for human beings. Local traders, often driven by complex motivations of power, profit, and survival, would bring captured Africans from the interior. These men, women, and children were torn from their homes, their families, their entire worlds, and marched in chains to the coast, their destination, this fortress by the sea. Nearby, another fort tells a similar, though shorter tale. The British built Fort Sekondi in 1682, a testament to the fierce competition among European powers to control the trade on the Gold Coast. For a time, 2 European flags flew over this small stretch of land, each nation vying for dominance in the trade of both goods and human lives. Fort Sekondi, however, did not last. It was attacked and destroyed by local Ahanta warriors, a fierce act of resistance against the foreign invaders who had brought so much suffering to their land. Though its physical presence was erased, its story remains a crucial part of Sekondi's history, a reminder that the trade was never a passive affair, but was met with defiance and struggle at every turn. These 2 forts, one standing and one lost to time, transformed Sekondi into a significant, if often overlooked, gateway to the Americas. They were the final pieces of African soil that countless souls would ever feel beneath their feet. Here, in the shadow of stone walls, families were shattered, identities were stolen, and futures were erased. The history of Sekondi is not just in its bustling markets or its busy port, it is buried deep within the earth, in the foundations of these forts, and in the silent dungeons that lie beneath. It is a history that whispers of unimaginable pain but also of the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming cruelty. Beneath the solid, imposing structure of Fort Orange lie the dungeons. These are not mere cellars, they are spaces designed to break the human soul before the body was ever loaded onto a ship. The air inside is thick, heavy with the ghosts of unshed tears and unspoken goodbyes. There is no sunlight here. The darkness is absolute, a suffocating blanket that robs you of time and hope. Enslaved Africans were forced down narrow, steep staircases into these subterranean pits, their ankles and wrists bound in iron. They were packed so tightly that there was no room to lie down, no space to even sit with comfort. They were forced to exist in a constant state of contact with strangers, all sharing the same fear, the same filth, and the same suffocating despair. The conditions were beyond comprehension. The stone floors were perpetually damp, slick with a horrifying mixture of sweat, urine, vomit, and blood. Disease spread like wildfire in this environment. Dysentery, fever, and skin ailments claimed many lives before the ships even arrived. Food was scarce and of poor quality, often just enough to keep the captives alive to preserve the traders' investment. They were given little water and the stench of death was a constant companion. For weeks, sometimes months, this was their entire world. Darkness, stench, hunger, and the constant rattling sound of chains. It was a calculated process of dehumanization, designed to strip away their identity, their dignity, and their will to resist. For women, the dungeons held particular terrors. They were not only subjected to the same horrific physical conditions as the men, but were also vulnerable to the brutal whims of the European soldiers and traders who governed the fort. The governor's quarters were often situated directly above the female dungeons, a cruel architectural detail that symbolized the power imbalance. Soldiers would routinely descend into the darkness to select women for sexual assault. Rape was a systematic tool of control and humiliation. Any woman who resisted faced severe punishment, and those who became pregnant were forced to endure their pregnancy in these same wretched conditions, their children born into slavery from their very first breath. Children, too, were not spared the horrors of the Sekondi dungeons. They were torn from their mother's arms, their cries echoing in the stone chambers, a sound that must have haunted all who heard it. They suffered the same hunger, the same sickness, and the same fear as the adults, but with the added trauma of incomprehension. They were branded with hot irons, marked like livestock to show ownership by a particular trading company. Imagine a child confused and terrified, feeling the searing pain of a brand on their skin. This was the reality within the fort. The dungeons of Sekondi were not just holding pens, they were factories of misery, engineered to crush every last vestige of humanity before the final terrible journey across the ocean. Even in the deepest pits of despair, the spirit of resistance flickered and burned. It was not always loud or violent, but it was always present. Within the suffocating confines of the Sekondi dungeons, enslaved Africans found ways to fight back, to hold on to the pieces of themselves that their captors tried so desperately to steal. Resistance could be as simple as an act of kindness, sharing a scrap of food with someone weaker. It could be the quiet humming of a song from a village left far behind, a melody that carried the memory of freedom. It could be the refusal to show fear in the face of a guard's brutality, a small but powerful assertion of one's own inner strength. These were acts that reclaimed a sliver of humanity in a place designed to erase it completely. More overt acts of defiance also occurred, though they were fraught with deadly risk. Some captives would refuse to eat, choosing to starve themselves rather than submit to their enslavement and enrich their captors. This ultimate act of self-determination was a powerful protest against their commodification. Others would stage uprisings, attacking their guards with whatever they could find, even their bare hands. While most of these rebellions were brutally suppressed, they sent a clear message. These were not docile victims. They were people with courage, with a fierce desire for freedom, who would fight for it until their last breath. The destruction of the British Fort Sekondi by Ahanta warriors is the most prominent example, a testament to the organized and powerful resistance that existed outside the dungeon walls as well. The scars left by Sekondi are not only physical, they are etched into the collective memory and identity of the Ghanaian people and the African diaspora. While the great castles at Cape Coast and Elmina are well-known symbols of the slave trade, drawing visitors from around the world, the story of Sekondi remains largely untold. Its dungeons are not preserved as museums, they are not part of the well-trodden tourist trail. This silence is a scar in itself. When a site of such profound historical importance is neglected, its stories are allowed to fade. The lessons it holds, about human cruelty, resilience, and the fight for justice, are lost to new generations, leaving an incomplete picture of the past. The importance of the Sekondi dungeons is equal to that of any other slave fort on the coast. Every single dungeon, every stone wall that witnessed these atrocities, holds a unique and vital piece of the larger story. The pain experienced in Sekondi was no less real, the resistance no less brave, the lives lost no less precious. To overlook Sekondi is to dishonor the thousands of individuals who passed through its gates of no return. Their journey into the diaspora began here. Their legacy is woven into the fabric of nations across the Atlantic. Recognizing Sekondi is not just about correcting a historical oversight, it is about acknowledging the full scope of the tragedy and honoring every single life that was caught in its brutal machinery. Today, the legacy of the Sekondi dungeons is in peril, threatened not by cannons or conquerors but by neglect. Fort Orange still stands, but its dungeons are not the solemn memorial they should be. There is a lack of official recognition and preservation. Local awareness is surprisingly low. Many residents go about their daily lives with little knowledge of the profound history that lies just beneath their feet. This is not a willful ignorance but the result of a history that has not been properly taught or memorialized. The stories of the dungeons have been swallowed by the passage of time, their echoes growing fainter with each passing year. Without a concerted effort to preserve these sites, we risk losing them forever. Preserving the Sekondi Slave Dungeons is a matter of national and global importance. These are not just ruins, they are sacred sites. They are classrooms where the most difficult and necessary lessons of history can be taught. For Ghanaians, they are a vital part of understanding the complexities of their own past. including the painful roles that different groups played in the trade. They are a foundation for a stronger national identity, one that does not shy away from the darkest chapters of its story. For the African diaspora, these dungeons are sites of pilgrimage, a tangible link to the ancestors who were stolen from this land. To stand in these spaces is to connect with a history that is deeply personal and profoundly powerful. We have a collective responsibility to ensure that the stories of Sekondi are told. This requires more than just maintaining the physical structures. It means investing in research to uncover the specific histories of these dungeons. It means creating educational programs for local schools and communities. It means building a memorial that treats the site with the reverence it deserves, a place for reflection, remembrance, and education. The goal should not be to create a tourist attraction, but to create a sanctuary of memory, a place that honors the dead and educates the living. It is a debt we owe to those who suffered within those walls. Let us not allow the silence to win. We must raise our voices for Sekondi. We must urge the government of Ghana, cultural organizations, and the international community to support the restoration and preservation of these hallowed grounds. Let us encourage storytellers, historians, and artists to explore this history and share it with the world. By remembering Sekondi, we honor the men, women, and children who endured the unimaginable. We pay tribute to their resistance, we acknowledge their pain, and we ensure that their legacy will never be erased. The echoes of the past are faint, but if we listen closely, we can still hear them. And it is our sacred duty to make sure they are never forgotten.